This one goes on Oscar watch for sure. Brendan Fraser is the front runner currently for the Best Actor Academy Award. It's time to talk about The Whale. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new film, The Whale. This is in theaters now. It's been expanding since late last year, and it features Brendan Fraser in an Oscar-worthy performance. We'll see if he ends up winning that award, but currently I do think he is the front runner. I think it's probably going to be between him and Austin Butler from the Elvis movie. Probably, those two kind of battling it out. But I think it might be Brendan Fraser's year. So before we get into the specifics of this movie, I want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We've got a ton of movie reviews here, especially leading up to the Oscar season, taking care of, some late 2022 movies and, earlier 2022 movies as well that I sort of have missed out on over the year. We'll be reviewing those as well in the coming weeks, but all leading up to the Oscars here. And Darren Aronofsky, no stranger to the Oscars race. He directed this movie, and of course he had success with Black Swan and The Wrestler and some other things. I am a little bit hit or miss on him, to be honest. But let's talk first about the story here in The Whale. I'm not going to give away too many details. I think this is one that maybe you don't want to know too much going in, but you probably know, if you know anything about it, you probably know that Brendan Fraser is playing this very, very large man. I don't know if they ever specifically say in the movie, they might. But I think I read something like, his character is about 600 pounds or something like that. But anyway, he is an English professor named Charlie, who is more or less confined to his home. Mobility is a big issue for him. And so we have the whole movie really taking place here in and around his house. There's, some front porch scenes, some bathroom, some bedroom, but for the most part, it's in like the living room, kitchen area of Charlie's place. And Sadie Sink, who is from Stranger Things, she plays his estranged teenage daughter. You have Hong Chow as Liz, who is a nurse and Charlie's best friend, and they sort of have a past together as well that, we get information about, and that develops as the movie goes on. You also have Ty Simpkins playing a Christian missionary for this New Life Church, and then also in a small role, Samantha Morton as well. Again, I guess we'll start here with the obvious. Brendan Fraser is sort of having a big comeback here with this movie. People love rooting for him. They always have. He's always seemed like a nice guy, right? And I will say, I'm not I'm a fan. I think he's, a decent person, good actor for sure. But I sort of missed a big chunk of that Brendan Fraser wave. Like I was on, in the ground floor in the early 90s when he was doing like School Ties and stuff like that, some of the dramatic roles. But when he was doing like George of the Jungle and some of the more kid-friendly stuff, I was already like in college by then, so I never watched that. I did see Monkey Bone. It was silly, but it was fun. And I'm not a huge fan, or at least I wasn't at the time, of just sort of, big action tent poles. So I've actually never seen the Mummy movies. I know that's like crazy, but I've never disliked Brendan Fraser. I think people are rooting for him, and especially with, the standing ovation that this movie got at, I think it was Sundance or Cannes or whatever, one of the festivals. And obviously people talking about his awards buzz. People are rooting for this guy to win, and I think he has a real good shot at it. This, I think, could be up for some other things, perhaps a Best Screenplay nomination. It is based on a previous work, I think a book maybe. It's a play. Okay, well, that makes sense. And it was written by Samuel D. Hunter, who wrote the play. That actually makes a lot of sense, knowing that. But so I could see maybe an adapted screenplay nomination for this. Definitely, makeup and hairstyling nomination. The hairstyling's whatever, but they lump that all into one category. So definitely, I think a makeup nomination is in the offing for this. But in terms of the performance, it's great. It is an excellent performance. I do think it is up there with the Austin Butler Elvis performance. I mean, Colin Farrell's in Banshees of Inisherin was great, but I think on the whole that was probably more of a sum of its parts kind of movie. Like, everything was great about this movie. Here I have some issues that I'll get into, but Brendan Fraser, really, I mean, he carries this movie, and he's in not quite every scene, but just about. There's a couple of conversation scenes that do not include him. Either he's sleeping or he's in the house when we're on the front porch, or something like that. But for the most part, he is in every scene of this movie, and he's excellent. There's a lot of emotion in his face, in his movements. He really, he moves like an obese man. He really does. He must have studied or something, but he really got that down well, I thought. And I know this is getting a little bit of criticism for you should cast somebody who actually is that size or whatever. I get kind of tired of that argument. It is called acting, and believe it or not, the whole point is to be somebody that you're not. So I can't fault the movie for that. But I will fault the movie for some things. First of all, one more positive. Let's get to that. I think another great performance here is Hong Chow as his nurse. I don't really see maybe a nomination for her, but I think she did a great job. She also is a huge emotional center in this movie. So let's get to the negatives, I guess. So while we're on performances, she's only in a couple of scenes in this movie, but Samantha Morton is horrible in this movie, and I can't figure out whether it is a script issue, and I don't think it is, because most of the other actors don't seem to have issue with the material. I hated her performance. It was overacted. It was just sort of cloying. I did not care for it, especially when taken next to the Brendan Fraser amazing performance. So that was definitely a negative. But let's get to Darren Aronofsky himself. So, like I mentioned, I think I mentioned this, I'm a little bit hit or miss on him. He's had some really good ones, but his last movie, Mother, I absolutely hated. This was, I think, 6 years ago now, or 5 years ago. Awful movie. I gave it an F. But interestingly enough, it does have a few things in common with this movie, because this movie does have some religious aspects to it, actually a lot of religious aspects to it, and Mother sort of was doing that too, but in a much more pretentious way. It was really sort of, I don't know, being just so obtuse with everything and irritating. And it was like, having a homework assignment, because I didn't understand what the movie was trying to say. And then it was kind of coming into focus. But then I was so annoyed by that it didn't matter. But here, there is such an interesting emotional and religious center to not just the movie, but specifically his character. Because he's in a bad way. He's got a really bad heart. And he doesn't really have a good relationship with faith, and we find out, a little bit about that as the movie progresses. As the gentleman from the New Life Church keeps, coming back to him to try and, peddle his wares about the Lord, I guess. And so it was a much more, I don't want to say subtle necessarily, reaction with the religious stuff over Mother. But Mother was just so annoying about it. Here I really thought, in fact, because it's all takes place kind of in one area, one room type of thing. I mean, this really could be considered like a passion play. And obviously it was based on a play, and that makes total sense. But Aronofsky's directing here is so simple and uninteresting. I was shocked, because like Black Swan didn't feel like that. The Wrestler didn't feel like that. And Mother, I can say a lot of things about it, but it wasn't uninteresting to look at. It was just kind of annoying in every other aspect. But, there's scenes here where there's, whoever's talking is just like a close-up of their face, and then we have a close-up of the other person's face. There's not a lot of reaction shots. There's some, but not a ton. And there's not a lot of wide shots either, where we see multiple people kind of, talking back and forth or whatever. And I thought it was very, very uninteresting directing, which is a shame, because the script is interesting, and I love Charlie's character, the English teacher, and his love for the written word and for essays and for creativity and all of that kind of stuff. Certainly a teacher I would have liked to have in college. I had some good ones in college, but I think he, would have made a nice addition to that. Because we see a little bit of him in his Zoom class and everything, teaching that. But yeah, I mean, really, this is like an A+ performance in a not A+ movie. And I had heard so many great things about it going in. It was getting all these accolades, but really, I think most of the accolades are probably more for Fraser's performance than anything, and they should be. He is what holds this movie together. It's certainly not the directing. It's certainly not some of the choices by the actors that aren't him. But overall, I do think he probably deserves to win this Oscar. I think it's going to be either him or Austin Butler. I think either would be a fine choice. Farrell's a fine choice too, but I think he's a little bit more of a long shot. But I will leave The Whale with a B. I wanted to like it more than I did on the whole, but I will say it's a thinker for sure. I really like the script. I liked a lot of the things it had to say. I just wish Aronofsky maybe got more out of it, with his directing. So, all right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.